And today's episode, I'm going to wander off onto the third rail and talk a little bit about economics. There's some crazy stuff going on right now. I don't know what it means for our industry, but it's probably about time we talked about it, frankly, and make sure that we're all prepared for what could lie ahead.
Welcome to your weekly dose of uncommon sense, helpful insights, and tough love. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. The Intentional Success Podcast comes to you through the generous support of Mertz Crew.
Mertz Crew helps top AV companies book quality AV freelancers. Your choice, your rates. We handle contracts, insurance, and payments. You save time, cost, and reduce risk. Start today at mertzcrew.com.
Now on to the show.
So 5 years ago, about this time, we were at the beginning of the pandemic, a month into it, finally figured out that we were in this for a long haul and that, companies were going to be forced to be shut down. People were having to stay home, social distancing. I think we were past the wiping off our groceries at the grocery store stage, but we were still masking up and wearing gloves for some reason, but we didn't know. We were doing everything we can to cope. Our clients had all canceled all of their meetings. We had no real revenue left. We were very dependent on, getting those high school kids graduated and doing drive-in theaters or whatever it is that we could do to make a buck. Wasn't a good place to be. Now, I've said many times the best outcome of the 2020 pandemic for our industry was it kind of slapped us into reality and understanding what actually makes our businesses work and what makes them successful and profitable. And the short answer to all of that is it's all about keeping your overhead low. And our overheads were very, very high. We were very dependent on revenue. We were in a cycle that we often call the death spiral, meaning that if we don't have the revenue that we need, we can't stay in business, and we need more revenue at any cost, and we need deposits on the next job so we can pay for the expenses on the current job. And while at the end of the year, it may look like you were profitable, throughout the year, you were in a constant state of crisis. And then the pandemic hit, and then we had the biggest crisis we could possibly imagine. So fast forward 5 years later, we're in another difficult situation. And while it's not on the scale of a pandemic, it has the potential to be just as bad in economic terms for our industry. And that's this tariff situation. We've got a U.S. president who's flinging tariffs around. Whether you agree with the long-range plan of how that's going to benefit us or not is irrelevant. In the short term, it's going to suck. And they're telling us it's going to suck because it is. It's going to suck. And we are already seeing some loss of business. I've had some clients who have lost a show here or there because the company that was putting on that show is highly dependent on imported goods to do their business. They're probably in some sort of manufacturing, pharmaceuticals. There's a whole lot of industries that can't function without imported goods. So this is a problem, and it's going to hit us. Now, not all of our industries are highly dependent on this, and there are some service industries that are going to plug along, but let's face it, you know which way the poo-poo flows. It's always downhill, and it's going to get to us. So we may not be seeing implications right now. We may not be seeing a ton of cancellations or downsizing on events. And I think it's partly because not everyone is taking this as seriously as they should, because they think this all can be reversed. The question is it reversible? And I find myself at that moment that I felt this time 5 years ago that, I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to say that this is all going to go away and everything's going to get back to some semblance of normal and they're going to rebalance some relationships and our industry and our clients are going to be secure enough to go ahead with business as usual. I'm not ready to say that. I'm also not ready to say that we're going to get shut down. We're somewhere in between. What I can say is we need to pay attention. However, we are in a much better place than we were 5 years ago. And the reason why is that so many of you have understood my calls and other people's calls to create more balance in your business, to keep your overhead down, to find more profit in the available revenue, be less dependent on revenue by volume and more dependent on gross profit by volume, so that we can run a scalable business and be less fearful of the little ups and downs that come with our seasonal industry. The threat of these tariffs is more than a seasonal upset. This is not a short-term thing. This could be a long-term thing. This could affect us for years. It could take a couple of years to get to a situation where whatever supposed benefits of this tariffs policy are actually manifest, and then we're all swimming in money again as promised. I'm not an economist, but I do have an MBA and I've done some math and I read a lot. I'm not seeing that outcome. So the best we can hope for is that some common sense comes back into play. We get this thing under control so that people can move forward with some confidence about the economy. They can be willing to invest in things. And remember, meetings are investments, right? And if we have an uncertain economy, if people are uncertain, they don't make investments or they find less expensive ways of doing it. Now, I hope you didn't put your streaming gear away because that may be the solution that some of your clients need. They need a much less expensive way to have meetings and communicate updates. If their world is more volatile, streaming is a great way to deliver messages that are going to be changing up to the last minute without overcommitting to bring 5,000 salespeople to Las Vegas. So if your business has not gone back to its pre-pandemic ways of being overstaffed, owning too much gear, never trying to outsource, trying to run a business that is completely insular from the rest of the industry and not working with outside suppliers and supply chains, unless you've gone back to that, chances are you could make the adjustments in anticipation of whatever you feel the next 90 days or 9 months or 9 years is going to be like. If you're one of those companies that has not achieved a balance in a scalable position, then it's time to have that conversation again about why not? What does that look like? I got a great book out there, wrote it several years ago in response to the pandemic. It is called Balance, How to Build a Scalable Business with Less Stress and More Profit. It is still on Amazon. We still sell a bunch of copies every month. It's available on Audible. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it in paperback. Have at it. But it does explain to you what your business would need to look like to be able to survive the ups and downs of an uncertain economy, as well as the ups and downs of a seasonal industry. Now, so balance is still a good thing. Balance is going to make this sudden foray into uncertainty easier for many of you. It doesn't mean that if we have an extended downturn, a deep recession, that you're not going to have to lay some folks off or make some hard decisions, but you're going to make much smaller adjustments than you would have made 5 years ago, and that's for sure. So hopefully you haven't overstaffed and you know how to adjust and you're outsourcing correctly. Now, it is going to create some turmoil in our staffing market and our talent market. It's going to put a bunch of freelancers out on the market, which might drive freelance prices down, particularly if the economy goes down. This is the only time I would ever expect a labor number to go down, but we can't count on it. And we can't say that that's what's going to happen and price accordingly. You need to assume that your costs will remain at what they are. You need to make the business that's available to you as profitable as possible. But I think you also have to be very flexible and cognizant of the reality of what your customers are going through in terms of their uncertainty and how all this tariff nonsense will affect their business. And then if you're not paying attention because you don't think it's going to affect you, then consider this your wake-up call that it is going to affect you. It is already affecting you in subtle ways that you may not be seeing. And I think in the near term, you're going to see some major shows downsize or go away. You need to be prepared for that. You need to revisit all the things about billing and how, instead of, remember all the deposits you had to give back 5 years ago? We don't want to do that. When you're billing somebody for progress on a job, we don't return that money. That's for work that you've already done. So make sure that you are embracing the things that we learned during COVID about progress billing and non-refundable payments that you need to run your business. And it reduces the need for cancellation fees. There are going to be cancellations, I am sure of it. But you don't want to be left being owed money that should have been paid in a deposit form of some sort, or being forced to return money for work that you've already done when you've had hard costs against it. So make sure those policies are intact. And as you're confirming shows right now, particularly for customers who are feeling uncertain and don't want to sign on the dotted line, assure them that there's a path to start work on their project that will minimize their risk, cover the expenses that you're going to incur, and allow them to adjust or downscale the meeting if they need to without losing any traction. So, I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, but I felt it was time that I said something to my listeners who have been very loyal and very good to me, and that you deserve that. If you haven't been thinking about it, know it's time to think about it. And if you've been wondering what I'm thinking about, this is what I'm thinking. I think we need to be very, very cautious. I think we need to be thoughtful about hiring. I think we need to continue to focus on our sales side, but we need to avoid adding overhead to our businesses. And we need to maintain some flexibility with our clients who may be going through a lot of uncertainty and need the confidence that we can help them and we have a solution for them when their budgets and their needs change. So, wow, there you go. So here we are, fingers crossed. Government gets things in orders, comes up with an actual plan, sticks to it, allows the markets to become certain enough to conduct business instead of having to stop everything because they're not sure what this chaos will yield. Uncertainty is bad for business. There's a lot of it out there right now. Take heed, protect yourself, protect your business, take care of your employees, take care of you. Don't spend so much time on social media like I do, reading about all of this stuff. Find some peace in your life because you've done the things to make your business scalable and you are set up for the unexpected. Thanks for listening.
If you liked this episode of the Intentional Success Podcast, please leave a review and don't forget to like and subscribe. This podcast has been brought to you by the helpful folks at Mertz Crew.